Give and Take, by Adam Grant. Introduction. Picture this. It's a sunny Saturday afternoon in Silicon Valley. Two fathers are on the sidelines of a soccer field, watching their young daughters play. One of them is a man named Danny Shader, a seasoned entrepreneur who's built and sold companies to giants like Amazon and Motorola for hundreds of millions of dollars. He's what you'd call a blue-chip entrepreneur, the kind of person who has the golden touch. The other father is a man named David Hornick, a venture capitalist. His job is to find the next big thing and invest in it. After a bit of sideline chatter, Shader mentions he's working on a new idea and asks Hornick if he'd like to hear the pitch. For a venture capitalist, this is like being a music producer and having a young Paul McCartney ask if you want to hear a new tune he's working on. It's a huge opportunity. A few days later, Shader pitches his idea, and Hornick loves it. He immediately offers to fund the company. Now, in the high-stakes world of venture capital, this is where the game gets intense. The standard move is to give the entrepreneur an exploding offer, a deadline to accept the money before the offer disappears. It's a power play, designed to lock them in before they can shop around. But David Hornick doesn't do that. Instead, he tells Shader, take as much time as you need to make the right decision. He even encourages him to pitch to other investors. He believes his job is to serve the entrepreneur, not pressure them. He even sends Shader a list of 40 people who can vouch for him, to show what it's like to work with him. Shader takes the next few weeks and pitches his idea to other firms. A few weeks later, Hornick's phone rings. It's Shader. He's made his decision. And he's going with another investor. Shader explains that Hornick seems like such a great, affable guy that he was worried he wouldn't be tough enough. He wanted someone on his board who would challenge him more. He tells Hornick, my heart said to go with you, but my head said to go with them. I decided to go with my head. Hornick is devastated. He wonders if he's just a dope. If he had played the game, applied pressure, maybe he would have landed the deal. He spent a decade building a reputation for being generous and trustworthy, and it just cost him a massive opportunity. It seems he just learned a hard lesson, one that we've all been told our entire lives: good guys finish last. Or do they? Today, we're diving into a book that shatters that very idea. It's called Give and Take by Adam Grant, and it presents one of the most revolutionary approaches to success I have ever encountered. Grant, a brilliant organizational psychologist, spent over a decade studying the hidden dynamics of success, and what he found turns conventional wisdom completely on its head. By the end of our time together, you'll understand a secret that the world's most quietly successful people live by. You will learn about the 3 types of people in this world: the givers, the takers, and the matchers, and you'll discover the one crucial difference that separates the givers who end up at the top of the ladder from those who get left at the bottom. This isn't just about being nice, it's about being smart, strategic, and ultimately, more successful than you ever thought possible, not by climbing over others, but by lifting them up. Book summary. In every interaction we have, whether it's at school, at work, or with friends, we make a choice. Do we try to get as much as we can from the other person, or do we try to contribute value without worrying about what we'll get in return? According to Adam Grant, this choice defines our reciprocity style, and it falls into one of 3 categories. First, there are the takers. Takers are easy to spot. They have a simple philosophy: get more than you give. They see the world as a competitive, dog-eat-dog place, and to win, they believe they have to be better than everyone else. When they help others, it's strategic. They're always asking, what's in it for me? They build networks to serve themselves, they hog the credit when things go well, and they're quick to point fingers when things go wrong. Then, there are the matchers. Matchers are the majority of people. They operate on the principle of fairness and equality. Their motto is an eye for an eye, or you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. If you do them a favor, they feel a deep-seated need to return it. They keep a mental ledger of credits and debits. Matchers believe in a world of even exchanges, and they get uncomfortable if they feel indebted to someone or if someone owes them for too long. They create a world that is fair and predictable. And finally, there are the givers. Givers are a rarer breed. They operate on a principle that feels almost radical in today's world. They prefer to give more than they get. They're other-focused, paying attention to what others need from them, rather than what they can get from others. This isn't about being a martyr or a saint. It's simply a default way of operating. When a giver meets someone, their first instinct isn't, "What can this person do for me?" but rather, "What can I do for this person?" Now, if I were to ask you which of these three types is most likely to end up at the bottom of the success ladder, who would you pick? If you said givers, you'd be right. Across a wide range of professions, from engineering to medicine to sales, Grant's research shows that givers are often at a disadvantage. Engineers who are givers are rated as the least productive because they're so busy helping their colleagues that they don't get their own work done. Medical students with high giver scores often have the lowest grades because they spend more time helping their peers study than focusing on their own knowledge gaps. In sales, givers often bring in the least revenue because they're so focused on the customer's best interest that they're not willing to sell aggressively. They are, in many ways, the doormats of the world, sacrificing their own success to help others. So, if givers are at the bottom, who's at the top? Takers or matchers? The answer is neither. When Grant looked again at the data, he found a shocking pattern. At the very top of the success ladder were the givers again. This is the central paradox of the book. Givers dominate both the bottom and the top of the success ladder, while takers and matchers tend to land in the middle. The worst performers are often selfless, burned-out givers. But the best performers, the superstars, the legends, are also givers. This creates the most important question of all. What separates the successful givers from the ones who fail? How do they avoid becoming doormats and instead rise to the top? The answer lies in how they navigate the world of networking, collaboration, and influence. Let's start with how these three types build relationships. Takers are often master networkers, but their style is purely transactional. A classic example Grant uses is Kenneth Lay, the infamous CEO of Enron. Lay was brilliant at building a network of powerful people, from presidents to prime ministers. He would do favors for influential people, creating a sense of obligation that he could cash in later. He was a master of kissing up and kicking down, charming to his superiors, but dismissive and controlling with his subordinates. Takers like Lay are often fakers. They put on the mask of a giver when they're dealing with someone who can help them, but their true nature eventually leaks out. They might use self-absorbed language, always talking about I, me, and my. Grant points to a fascinating study showing that you could predict a CEO's taker tendencies just by looking at their company's annual report. Taker CEOs, like Lay, often featured huge, full-page photos of themselves, putting themselves at the center of the universe. They also had massive pay gaps between themselves and their next highest-paid executive. Over time, this self-serving approach burns bridges. Matchers, who make up most of the world, believe in fairness. When they see a taker violate that principle, their instinct is to punish them. They gossip, spread negative reputational information, and warn others. In today's hyper-connected world, where reputations are more transparent than ever thanks to social media, it's much harder for takers to get away with their behavior. As Grant puts it, the long run is getting shorter. Successful givers, on the other hand, build their networks in a fundamentally different way. Their goal isn't to get something, it's to give something. Grant introduces us to a man named Adam Rifkin, a shy, introverted software engineer who Fortune magazine once named the best networker in America. He had more connections to the most powerful people on LinkedIn than anyone else on the planet, beating out famous CEOs and even the founder of LinkedIn himself. How did he do it? With something he calls the 5-minute favor. Rifkin believes you should be willing to do something for anyone that will take you 5 minutes or less. Making an introduction, sharing a piece of knowledge, giving some quick feedback, these are small acts of giving that cost him very little but can bring immense value to someone else. He does this without keeping score. He's not a matcher strategically giving to create an obligation. He's a giver who is simply looking for opportunities to help. And this creates a ripple effect. When you help people without any strings attached, matchers feel a desire to repay you, and other givers are inspired to pay it forward. You build up a reservoir of goodwill that is far more powerful than a network of transactional relationships. One of the most powerful concepts Grant explores is the idea of dormant ties. These are the people we used to know but have lost touch with, old colleagues, classmates, friends from a previous life. We often feel awkward reaching out to them for help. But for a giver, reconnecting with a dormant tie is a goldmine. Because they've built a history of generosity, when they reach out after years of silence, people are often thrilled to hear from them and eager to help. Grant tells a fantastic story about Rifkin. In the early days of the internet, he created a fan website for the band Green Day, just for fun. A punk rock fan named Graham Spencer emailed him, suggesting he add links to real punk bands. Instead of ignoring it, Rifkin, acting as a giver, happily added the links. They lost touch. 5 years later, Rifkin was starting a company and needed advice. He remembered Spencer and reached out. It turned out that Graham Spencer had co-founded Excite, one of the biggest search engines of its time. Spencer not only met with Rifkin but connected him with a venture capitalist who funded his company. A 5-minute favor, done years earlier with no expectation of return, came back in a life-changing way. This is the magic of a giver's network. It's not about what you can get, it's about what you can contribute. And over time, that generosity creates a force of goodwill that carries you forward. Now, let's look at collaboration. How do givers work in a team? We often think of creative geniuses as lone wolves, difficult personalities who need to protect their brilliant ideas. Grant uses the example of the legendary architect Frank Lloyd Wright, a classic taker. He was a creative genius, but he was also known for stealing credit from his apprentices and exploiting those who worked for him. For a 9-year period in his career, Wright's productivity plummeted because he had isolated himself from the talented collaborators who helped bring his visions to life. In stark contrast, Grant introduces us to George Meyer, who many consider the comedic genius behind The Simpsons. Though he wasn't one of the creators, Meyer was the driving force in the writer's room for years. He was an idea machine, but he rarely took credit for his jokes. He would generate brilliant lines, give them to other writers, and let them get the credit on the script. He was more concerned with making the show as good as it could possibly be than with advancing his own name. This is what Grant calls expedition behavior, a term for mountaineering that means putting the group's success ahead of your own. By doing this, Meyer wasn't being a doormat. He was being a genius maker. He used his intelligence to amplify the capabilities of everyone around him. His generosity didn't make him invisible. Instead, it earned him immense respect and influence. The other writers trusted him, valued his opinion above all others, and wanted him in the room. When he tried to leave the show, they banded together to persuade him to stay. His success created a ripple effect. Instead of a zero-sum game where one person's win is another's loss, Meyer expanded the pie for everyone. When the show succeeded, everyone succeeded. This brings us to another key difference. Takers are often consumed by the responsibility bias. They systematically overestimate their own contributions and underestimate the contributions of others. Jonas Salk, the man credited with the polio vaccine, famously failed to acknowledge his lab team at the press conference announcing his discovery. His team was devastated, and his reputation in the scientific community never fully recovered. He was seen as a taker who hogged the credit. Givers like Meyer, on the other hand, are so focused on the collective goal that they often underestimate their own contributions. They're quick to use words like we instead of I, which fosters a psychologically safe environment where everyone feels they can contribute without fear of being judged or having their ideas stolen. This brings us to the subtle art of influence. How do you persuade people? Takers often use powerful communication. They speak assertively, project confidence, and try to establish dominance. They want to be the smartest person in the room. Successful givers, however, often use what Grant calls powerless communication. This might sound like a disadvantage, but it's surprisingly effective. Powerless communication involves things like expressing vulnerability, asking questions, talking tentatively, and seeking advice. Grant tells the story of Dave Walton, a brilliant lawyer who has a stutter. In his first closing argument before a jury, he was terrified. He stumbled over his words a few times. His opponent was a polished, experienced lawyer who spoke with flawless confidence. But after the trial, which Walton won, several jurors approached him. They told him they admired his courage for being a trial lawyer despite his stutter. His vulnerability made him seem more human, more real, and more trustworthy. It wasn't that he won because of his stutter, but it helped him connect with the jury on a human level. This is an example of the pratfall effect. When a highly competent person shows a small vulnerability, like spilling coffee on their suit, it actually makes them more likable. It humanizes them. Givers are naturally more comfortable with this because they aren't obsessed with projecting an image of perfection. Asking questions is another form of powerless communication that givers use masterfully. Takers love to provide answers to show how smart they are. Givers ask questions because they are genuinely curious about the other person's perspective. Bill Grumbles, a former executive at HBO, became a top salesman simply by asking questions. He let his customers talk, and in doing so, he learned exactly what they needed while making them feel heard and respected. Seeking advice is perhaps the most powerful strategy of all. When you ask someone for advice, you're not just getting information. You are showing them that you value their expertise and judgment. It's a form of flattery that also invites them to become a partner in your problem solving. Grant tells the story of a research scientist named Annie, who was about to lose her job due to a plant closure unless she accepted a transfer that would force her to abandon her MBA program. Instead of making demands, she simply asked a manager in HR for advice. If you were in my shoes, what would you do? That one question turned the manager into her advocate. The manager, now invested in Annie's problem, started lobbying on her behalf, which eventually led to the company providing Annie with a seat on the corporate jet to fly back and forth to finish her degree. By asking for advice, she transformed a potential conflict into a collaborative partnership. So, we've seen how givers can succeed. But what about the givers at the bottom? What are the traps they fall into? And how do the successful ones avoid them? This is where Grant introduces the crucial distinction between being selfless and being otherish. Selfless givers are the ones who burn out. They have high concern for others but low concern for themselves. They give their time and energy away until there's nothing left. They become doormats. This often happens because they feel like they're giving into a vacuum, with no sense of the impact they're making. Grant conducted a fascinating study at a university call center where fundraisers were burning out from constant rejection. The givers were the least productive. But then, he arranged for them to spend just 5 minutes with a student who had received a scholarship funded by their work. Suddenly, they could see the tangible impact of their efforts. In the following weeks, their productivity skyrocketed, far surpassing the takers and matchers. Giver burnout isn't about giving too much, it's about not seeing the difference your giving makes. Successful givers are not selfless, they are otherish. They care about benefiting others, but they also keep their own interests in their rearview mirror. They look for ways to help others that are not at their own expense. One way they do this is by chunking their giving instead of sprinkling it. Instead of helping in small, scattered moments throughout the day, which can be distracting and draining, they set aside dedicated blocks of time for giving. Research shows that people who perform 5 acts of kindness in a single day are significantly happier than those who spread them out over a week. Chunking makes the impact feel more salient and less like a constant drain. The other major trap for givers is being exploited by takers. The financial advisor Peter Audette, who we met earlier, was swindled multiple times by agreeable takers, people who seemed friendly and cooperative on the surface but were ultimately self-serving. Successful givers learn to practice sincerity screening. They start by trusting others, but they pay attention to how people act over time. They learn to distinguish the agreeable fakers from the genuine givers, and even the disagreeable givers, people who may be gruff on the outside but are generous at their core. When they identify a taker, successful givers don't become takers themselves. They shift their style and become matchers. They adopt a strategy of generous tit-for-tat. They'll cooperate and give, but if someone takes advantage of them, they'll reciprocate by acting more cautiously and demanding fairness, just as a matcher would. But they remain generous, occasionally giving the taker a chance to redeem themselves. This protects them from being endlessly exploited. Finally, givers overcome their natural reluctance to be assertive, especially in negotiations, by becoming advocates for others. Many givers, and women in particular, are hesitant to negotiate hard for themselves because they worry about being seen as demanding or selfish. But studies show that when they negotiate on behalf of someone else, a friend, a colleague, their family, they become incredibly effective and assertive advocates. Their giving nature is channeled into fighting for others. Samir Jain, a man who was a pushover his whole life, transformed into a powerful negotiator when he received a job offer. He stopped thinking about it as what was best for him and started thinking about what was best for his family. Suddenly, he had the courage to push for what was fair, and he ended up negotiating a package worth over $70,000 more than the initial offer. He was being otherish, advocating for others whose interests were aligned with his own. This all leads to the final, beautiful idea in the book: how we can create more givers in the world. Often, people act like takers or matchers because they assume everyone else is. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But environments can be designed to encourage giving. Grant highlights Free Cycle, the online community where everything must be given away for free. People often join to get free stuff, a taker's motive, but they quickly see that the norm is giving. They see their neighbors, people just like them, contributing. This shared identity and visible norm of giving shifts their behavior. They start giving too, because they want to be part of the community. A similar effect happens in an exercise Grant uses called the reciprocity ring. A group of people get together, and each person makes a request. The rest of the group then pools their knowledge and connections to help. In this public setting, even takers are motivated to contribute because they know their reputation is on the line. It becomes a win-win. They can do good and look good at the same time. And this is where the real transformation can happen. When someone, even a taker, repeatedly makes the choice to give, they begin to see themselves differently. The behavior starts to shape their identity. They start to see themselves as a giver. Let's go back to that soccer field. David Hornick, the venture capitalist who lost the deal, didn't stay devastated for long. The entrepreneur, Danny Shader, couldn't shake the feeling that he had made a mistake. He was so impressed with Hornick's character that he went back and found a way to bring him into the deal, even though it meant diluting his own ownership. Hornick's reputation as a giver didn't just win him back that deal, it became his greatest asset. He has one of the highest signing rates in the venture capital industry. Why? Because entrepreneurs know that he genuinely has their best interests at heart. He's not trying to win at their expense, he's trying to help them win. And in the long run, as everyone roots for him to succeed, he wins too. His story, and all the stories in this book, point to a profound truth. Success isn't a zero-sum game. It's not about taking the biggest slice of the pie. The most enduring form of success is about making the pie bigger for everyone. Takers may win the sprint, but givers win the marathon. They build deeper relationships, stronger reputations, and create a world where everyone has a chance to rise. They prove that you don't have to be ruthless to get ahead. You can be generous, you can be helpful, and you can still end up on top. Commentary. As we wrap up our journey through Give and Take, I want to take a moment to reflect on what makes this book so powerful. For years, the narrative of success, especially in the Western world, has been dominated by the image of the lone genius, the ruthless competitor, the individual who claws their way to the top. What Adam Grant does so brilliantly is offer a different story, a story that feels not only more hopeful but also more true to the best parts of our nature. The most profound lesson for me is the distinction between being selfless and being otherish. This is the key that unlocks the whole puzzle. Before reading this, many of us might think that to be a good person in the professional world means we have to sacrifice our own ambitions. We have to be selfless, let others walk all over us, and accept that we'll probably finish last. Grant liberates us from that false choice. He shows us that the most successful givers are not martyrs. They are ambitious, just like takers and matchers. They simply pursue their ambitions in a way that lifts others up along with them. Being otherish is about understanding that your goals and the goals of others don't have to be in conflict. It's about looking for the win-win. It's about asking, how can my success benefit others? And how can their success benefit me? This mindset shifts you from a scarcity mentality, where there's only so much pie to go around, to an abundance mentality, where you believe you can always make the pie bigger. This idea has practical, immediate applications in our lives. Think about how you approach your relationships. Are you keeping a scorecard like a matcher? Are you strategically looking for what you can get, like a taker? Or are you looking for small, 5-minute favors you can do for people, without any expectation of return? Just starting there, with small acts of generosity, can begin to shift the entire dynamic of your network. Here are a couple of simple actions you can take, starting today, to put these principles into practice. First, reconnect with a dormant tie. Think of one person you haven't spoken to in over a year, an old colleague, a friend from school, and send them an email. But here's the key: don't ask for anything. Instead, just say you were thinking of them, ask what they're working on, and see if there's any way you can help them. This simple act rekindles a connection and reinforces your identity as a giver. Second, when you're facing a negotiation or a difficult conversation, try shifting your perspective. Instead of thinking only about what you want, think about who you are advocating for. Maybe it's your family, your team, or a cause you believe in. When you frame your assertiveness as an act of service to others, you'll find a strength and confidence you didn't know you had. Ultimately, Give and Take is more than just a business book. It's a blueprint for a different way of living. It suggests that the most meaningful and sustainable path to success is not a battle to be won, but a contribution to be made. It reminds us that our legacy is not defined by what we achieve for ourselves, but by what we enable others to achieve. The takers leave behind a trail of burned bridges. The matchers create a balanced, transactional world. But the givers, the otherish givers, are the ones who create a ripple effect of success that spreads far beyond themselves, making the world a little bit richer for everyone. That was a deep dive into Give and Take by Adam Grant. We've explored the main ideas today, but I have to be honest with you, a summary is just the appetizer. The full meal, the real nourishment, comes from reading the book yourself. It's in the quiet moments when a story clicks, or a single sentence reframes a problem you've been wrestling with for years. This podcast is here to help you decide if a book deserves your precious time. If anything we've talked about today sparked a light in you, I encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning new concepts, it's an experience that can fundamentally change how you see your role in the world and your path to success. The link to the book is in the description. Also, if you found this summary valuable, please do me a small favor and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It tells me that this work is making a difference for you, and it ensures you won't miss our next journey into another life-changing book from the billionaire's bookshelf. Let's keep growing together.